Well, welcome back, folks. Today we're going to begin the journey of completing the reassembly of the top end of the YL1 engine, that being the cylinders, pistons, rings, cylinder heads, etc. What you see in the shot right now are the original parts that I removed when I broke the bike down some time ago now. But I have obtained new neck size over pistons and rings, which I'll share with you in a moment. I've got new base gaskets, new head gaskets. Pretty much everything here is either already been replaced or will be replaced as I move on to reassembling the top end. I don't know right now what happened to the left wrist pin bearing that you can see here in my right hand. This is from the right cylinder. I don't know what happened to that when I took it apart. I must have misplaced it, which is unusual for me, but these things happen. I am going to replace these cylinder head stud nuts you can see here. I do have the originals, but these are in pretty rough condition, and though they could probably be salvaged, well, they could be salvaged, it's a matter of what they're going to look like when they're done. I could strip the rust off, I could clean them, I could replate them, but these are still available from Yamaha along with the washers relatively inexpensively, and Partzilla right now has free shipping. So I'm going to order the head bolts, or nuts rather, and the washers new from Yamaha through Partzilla, I think. And that'll take here a few days or a week to get those before I can go ahead and move on with assembly. You'll notice this washer, which came off the bike, someone had replaced it somewhere along the way with the wrong one. But nonetheless, all these parts can be replaced. Let's talk about the cylinder heads for a moment before we move on to the cylinders themselves. Clearly these are dirty. I'm going to take them over to my parts washer cabinet and give them a good soak and cleaning and get some of this grunge and oil buildup out of here. I think they're in okay condition. Clean the carbon out of in here. I will very likely use my soda blast unit to clean this. I don't think I'm going to do final cleaning, media cleaning. I don't believe I'm going to use the glass beads. I think I can get a little bit nicer finish with the soda blast unit, which I'll talk about as part of this series of restoring these cylinders, or cylinder heads rather. Cylinders have already been done. So the cylinder heads are going to be cleaned in my parts cabinet, going to be media blasted with bicarbonate of soda, and that should leave them in really good condition, I think, when we're all done. Let's talk about the pistons a little bit here before we move much further. The original left piston, which I've talked about before, had severe damage to it. You can see right there where the crown is cracked. The ring lands have been blown away, the skirt's been blown away, and I believe that was caused by, when the engine was bored previously, they probably didn't relieve and chamfer the cylinder ports, and the rings snagged on the ports, or port, and created catastrophic damage like you can see there. And if you recall, when I talked about the crank and the connecting rods, one of the connecting rods was bent. I don't remember if it was this one or not, but it probably was. The right piston is in reasonably good shape. You can see evidence of detonation right there. It was probably caused by low octane fuel and or a lean running condition. And the cylinder head showed evidence of the same thing, that is, a little detonation damage. This is a 38.5 millimeter piston. I think you can see it right there. Standard bore in these engines was 38 millimeters. And they offered 4 oversized options: 38.25 millimeters, 38.5 millimeter, 38.75, and then 39 millimeters. This 38.5 stamping here on the top of the piston indicates this engine was on its second overbore, so it had been bored at least once previous. That's probably the last time when these rings snagged. I had to take it all the way to 39, or the fourth overbore, due to damage of the cylinder walls. This cylinder in particular had some gouging in it. So I did go to the fourth over, which is the last size I can go, which is 39 millimeter. So we'll talk about those pistons now. Here's the piston kit I picked up on eBay. This is by Hap Jones. Hap Jones was a large aftermarket and speed equipment supplier back in the, well, I'm going to say late 60s, certainly into the 70s. I think they're long since gone. I don't think they're in business anymore. These are a fourth oversized piston. You can buy NOS Yamaha pistons, but they're real pricey. And you can see right there, I think, it's stamped 1.00, which tells me that's the fourth oversize. The kit came with, it's labeled pins, rings, and circlips, and it actually did come with everything you see here. The wrist pins and the circlips to go with them. You should always replace circlips, if at all possible, with new when you're doing this kind of work, rebuilding the top end. It's not always possible, but it's always advised if you can to replace the circlips that locate the wrist pin and the connecting rod. Of course, the pistons. And then this kit came with rings. Now, I don't know whether they supplied the original Yamaha rings or somewhere along the way. I don't know the arrangement that they had to get these rings in here. But these are, see, two of each. There's two different types. And we'll go through that in more detail when I go ahead and put the engine together, start putting the top end on, and talk about the rings and where they're positioned at that point. But this kit did come with the rings, Yamaha original rings, and you can see they're first oversized too. So this is a matched kit for the pistons, rings, circlips, and wrist pins. Here's the cylinders, and these are the originals that came off the bike. And you can see, I think, they have been bored and honed. I didn't bore and hone these because I don't have really a way, well, I would have to think through a way to fixture it on my lathe. I probably could do it, but I just take it to a local machine shop. It's about 15 miles away from me, and they do it within 24 hours or so. I'll have them back. And I also have the oversized pistons that go with these. So you can see both of these have been cleaned up and they're really ready to go, even though I'll probably touch up the gasket surfaces a bit with a red abrasive pad before I go ahead and assemble them. The paint, I'd have to look, to be honest with you, which paint I used. But this is a high temperature semi-gloss. It's not a high gloss, it's a semi-gloss. I've always struggled a little bit with cylinder paints because they seem to either be too high gloss or too low gloss or a matte finish. And trying to find the right color that matched the originals that the various manufacturers used, for me, has always been a bit of a crapshoot. I think this paint, and again, you'll have to forgive me, I'll have to look it up to see which paint I used. These were painted probably 6 months ago, and that is actually a semi-gloss paint. Many of the black high temperature paints end up being a matte or a flat finish, which doesn't, to my eye, look original. It seems to me, as I recall, most of the original cylinders that were painted were more of a semi-gloss, but this paint, I'm going to give it a shot, and again, it is a high temperature paint, suitable for cylinders. My main focus next is going to be starting on those cylinder heads I showed you a moment ago, getting those cleaned and getting those prepped and ready to go together. Before I place these cylinder heads in the parts cleaning tank, I'm going to use a little inexpensive engraver, a little vibrating tip there, to identify right or left, because the original label I put on here with a marker, Sharpie, this is obviously right, the right cylinder head, so it's something like that. I want to put them back where I got them from. So in other words, even though I believe these cylinder heads are symmetrical, and that means they can be swapped around, I'm just going to take a moment to engrave here on the bottom where it won't be seen. R for right, L for left. And then when this gets washed off in the cleaning process, I can ensure that I get them back in the right orientation. Is it absolutely necessary or critical in this case to put the cylinder heads back on the same side they came off of? No, probably not. But it's just something that I prefer to do. It doesn't take very long. It's easy to do. And I just feel better about it. In terms of this engraver, this is just a very inexpensive Asian-made engraver that I picked up a while back. I think I got it at one of those hardware store, bins, and you walk in the front door and they got the bins with all the tools on discount and clearance and items they're trying to get rid of. I think I paid like $1 for it, and frankly, it's not worth much more than that. And even though it does work, it's not the greatest tool in terms of quality or functionality, but I think it'll work for my purposes here. Let's see if we can zoom in here a little bit for you. So there you can see an R. I'll do the same thing to the left cylinder head. Now I'll keep an eye on that, because if during the abrasive blasting process with the soda media it looks like that's coming off, I'll just touch it up at the time. But at least to get us through the cleaning and getting this off, that'll be okay. I'm going to go ahead and do the left, and I'm going to move over to the parts cleaning. Here's my parts cleaning tank, and I don't think I've really talked about this very much in previous videos outside of referencing it once in a while. I did do a video some time ago on installing a drain system to it, and maybe even talked about this flexible pipe that I modified. I don't recall all the details because that was a number of years ago, but it is out there if anyone's interested in what I did to modify this inexpensive parts tank. It's a 20-gallon unit, I believe. I use a solvent-based high flash point cleaning fluid. I prefer solvent-based versus water-based, primarily because of corrosion, and I just find it cleans better, frankly. And it is a high flash point, meaning that it's not volatile like gasoline would be. That is, you got to be very, very careful. You have to be careful of this, of course, but it's considered a safe solvent, as safe as solvents can be. And I use care around it, and I take care. I don't run out the circulating system when I'm not here. I'll soak parts, of course, when I'm not here, but I don't run the tank if I'm not present in the shop itself. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to turn on the filter, or rather the circulation pump, and I'm just going to start hosing down the cylinder heads. I've got some other things to do here in the shop, some organizing I'm going to do, so I'm going to putter around here, but I'll be present in the building and run the circulator for a while, reposition the heads from time to time and move them around, probably flip them over, and just do a general washing and let the tank do the washing for me. Eventually I might do a little scrubbing with some of the brushes. You can see I've got an assortment of different kinds of brushes here that I use in the tank. And certainly the parts will probably be soaked overnight over in the bath itself for a day or so before I move on to the next step, which would be soda blasting, media blasting. So you'll notice also that I have chemical resistant gloves. I have 2 of them, and I do not put my hand in that chemical. I know I see people that do it all the time on YouTube and other places, and kind of gives me the shivers a little bit when I see that, because you will absorb through your skin, you can absorb through your skin dangerous chemicals that end up in your liver and all that kind of thing. And I'm in this tank a fair amount, so I always use these chemical gloves. These happen to be brand new. I just replaced the previous set that was starting to get wore out. But these are chemical resistant gloves. I keep them right here at the tank, so if they're always handy and available to me. So I'm going to go ahead and start the circulating pump. Lean over here and turn it on. And I'm just going to hose them down a little bit and let it run like this for a while. Move it around, and then I will bring you back probably on the other end of this whole cleaning cycle so you can see how they come out of the tank, what they look like. We're going to go ahead now and remove the cylinder heads from the soak tank. These actually have been soaking for about 2 days. I was originally going to soak them for about 1, but I got going on some other projects around the house and just left them in. I did remove them once in between about 24 hours ago, and used a small screwdriver like this to scrape down in between the fins. This bike had clearly been ridden off-road because there was grit and sand and debris, dirt wedged down into in between these cylinder fins, combined with excuse me, oil, and it became kind of baked on. So I just used a screwdriver and kind of cleaned that out like you see there, and had to kind of pry out the crud. And then I put them back, the cylinder heads back in the tank, and soaked them for another 24 or so hours, and then I rinsed them really well like you see here. And they're about ready to go to the next phase. A couple of comments on these gloves that I mentioned, I think a few minutes ago earlier, these chemical gloves. If you use chemical gloves like these, and I bought these at a big box store, I buy them oversized, way oversized, so that I can easily slip my hands into them. I don't like them to fit too tight because I slip them on and off and on and off. So I like them to be oversized like you can see here. These are way too big for me, but that's okay for the type of work that I'm doing around a cleaning tank. You can use like a nitro glove like you see here, which I use a lot of. The problem with nitro gloves, number one, or the primary problem with them, is they will very rapidly start to swell to the point that I worry about them being compromised and starting to leak. So I don't use nitro gloves. I just keep a pair of these inexpensive chemical gloves on hand. Back to the cylinder heads, what we're going to do now is I'm going to take them and submerge them in a bucket of hot soapy water, as hot as I can stand, with a little dishwashing wash-up soap, and we're going to scrub them up good and get the solvent and any remaining oils off before I move on to the media blasting phase. So these are going to be immersed now in a bucket of very hot soapy water. So you can see the shallow plastic pan I have. I've got hot water mixed with dishwashing or wash-up liquid mixed in here. I've been soaking these for just a few minutes, and I've been using a combination of brushes such as this soft steel brush. I've got a soft nylon type of brush, and also I have this brass tubular shaped brush. These are pretty well worn, as you can see, that I've been working down in between the fins like that to do the best I can to get down in there. Now this is just a a basic cleaning again to get the oil off and any remaining solution from the parts tank, which is a solvent based, before we move on to the media blast step. Now, one of the things that I've realized here is I've been cleaning these like this, is that I'm not sure, get that down where you can see it, I'm not sure the soda blasting is going to adequately clean this metal, this aluminum. I think it might be too gentle. So what I may have to do is resort to using glass speeds first and then going back to the soda to put the final finish on it. I think I'm going to start with soda first, and I'll be able to tell very quickly whether that's going to clean it up or not, especially down in these crevices. And if it doesn't, I'll go on to the blast cabinet and glass beads, do an initial blast there, go back to soda and see if we can't finish it up. But I'm going to finish washing these up and soaking them a bit, then I'll rinse them in clean hot water, dry them well before I move on to that next phase of media blast. That's it for this video, folks. Appreciate you watching. Any questions, drop me a note. Otherwise, thanks for watching.